Welcome. First off, I'd like to thank everyone who's watching this video and welcome them to the Libertarian Solution YouTube channel. For those of you who are unfamiliar, the Libertarian Solution is a radio show which broadcasts live in Phoenix on Thursdays at 8 p.m., is rebroadcasts in Tucson, Arizona, Douglas, Arizona, and Globe, Arizona on Sundays. Those times, of course, are going to be changing here in the near future. We're going to try and get all four of them synced up so the radio show will air live on all four stations at the same time. We're probably looking at Saturday evenings on that. But we do the show live, and we post the podcasts on our website at libertariansolution.com, where we also have some interesting articles there. We have live interactive features during the radio show. Some good articles and other information there that could be useful for anyone who wants to learn more about libertarianism. Now, the show is hosted by myself, Nick Coons, also Richard Sutton and Jim Iannuzzo, and the three of us have been doing the show for about a year now. And I'm actually kind of new to the whole video casting thing and talking to cameras. Normally, when I'm presenting ideas, I'm talking into a radio microphone, so it doesn't matter where I'm looking, or I'm talking to a live crowd, an audience, and so I'm end up looking back and forth and talking to everyone. So if you see my eyes kind of dart off to the side a little bit, it just means I'm looking at my notes on my computer screen, and because I do have a couple of notes there, so I know exactly where I'm going with this. But of course, if you're interested in learning more about our show, you can tune in at libertariansolution.com and subscribe to the newsletter, check out the Facebook fan page, and of course subscribe to this channel, because this is something new that we'll be doing and adding more videos here. And essentially the videos, the purpose of this channel is to address listener emails. We do get quite a few listener emails throughout the week of people having specific questions, and in the past we've always addressed those emails directly. And anyone who's familiar with libertarianism knows that we tend to be a bit verbose, and it takes a bit to go into the details of a lot of those answers to explain the philosophy behind everything. So I thought it might be a good idea to answer those emails through video and post them publicly, so that more people who might be interested in those questions can get the benefit of that, and also to handle topics that are outside the show. The show's 1 hour long. We do it once a week, and there's usually a lot more to talk about than what we can fit into the 1 hour show. So this will be an opportunity for us to address issues outside of just what we can do on the radio show within the 1 hour that we have. But to give you kind of an example of what we'll be addressing here, I do have an email from a listener that I'll tackle. It reads in part, "I was speaking with a gentleman about libertarian principles and ideas. He agreed that they seemed great. However, he didn't agree with forming a party based on those principles. Constitutionalists, libertarians, as well as other conservative-minded groups and peoples have very similar thoughts when it comes to government and how it should be run. However, they feel as though the Republican Party has abandoned them. Why not, instead of forming multiple third parties with quote-unquote arbitrary differences, don't all of these third parties decide to put apart those differences and unite along with their similar ideals and reclaim the Republican Party? I must admit I am quite new to the libertarian way of thinking, so I had no way to counter his argument. It seemed he presented a valid statement. What is your take on this? Do you believe it to be a good idea? And if so, do you think it is a reachable goal?" And I can understand this view. It's very I think common among people who are new to the idea of libertarianism, or who maybe are disenfranchised Republicans, who are conservative-minded people, maybe a lot of people who were brought in through the Ron Paul movement a couple of years ago. And I mean, essentially the basic answer is libertarians aren't Republicans. We're not constitutionalists. We're not conservatives. There is a hard, non-arbitrary difference, a hard line, a philosophical line that separates libertarians from other ideologies and other philosophies. Essentially, it comes down to a few basics. Libertarians believe, very simply here, libertarians believe in the concept of self-ownership. It means, I own my body, I own what I do, I own the product of my labor. All those things belong to me. And no one really has a right to tell me how to use those things, so long as I don't do that in a way that infringes on other people's same rights. I can, the whole thing about, I have the right to swing my fist around in the air, but my rights end where your nose begins type of thing. You can't infringe on other people's rights. That's a very hard line there that libertarians take, and we have the non-initiation of force, the non-aggression principle, which is essentially another way of saying the same thing. You can pretty much do anything you want so long as you're not violating the rights of other people to do the same thing. So we have full rights to life, liberty, and property, and that sort of thing. Republicans, conservatives, constitutionalists, not really in the same boat there. For instance, a constitutionalist would be more along the lines of what the Constitution says. Libertarians, believing in non-aggression and self-ownership, take the stance that all taxation is theft. Taxes are not good. They are completely immoral, and there are all sorts of things I can get into in other video casts about those. And we've talked about them on the show a lot too. We've got lots of articles. You can always tune in and listen to some of our previous arguments there. But essentially, libertarians take the idea of no taxation. There's all sorts of ways that you can fund roads and police and schools and things like that without taxes. But that's kind of the summation of it, is that no taxes, taxation is theft. Theft is when someone takes property from you against your will, against your consent. If I break in your house and I steal your TV, that's theft. Obviously, I did that without your consent, without you saying that was okay for me to do. The government does the same thing with taxes. You pay taxes only because they threaten violence if you don't. People don't generally pay taxes voluntarily. It's not like if the government didn't say you had to pay tax, you would send in taxes. And of course we can see this because people don't send in more than what the government says they owe. If you owe $2,000 your income taxes, most people aren't going to send them $3,000. You're going to just send the minimum, what you have to send, and because you know what the consequences are if you don't send those. On the other hand, the Constitution, in Article 1, Section 8, specifically gives Congress the authority to tax. And my understanding of constitutionalism is that constitutionalists have no problem with this at all. So, that's one big difference. That's a big fundamental difference. Now, if you were to look at the way libertarians would implement a system, or constitutionalists would implement a system, or maybe even some conservatives would implement a system, they might look very similar. We might agree on things like no nationalized health care. We want that free market based. Things like maybe private currencies, maybe not having a Federal Reserve. A lot of things like that we would agree on the end result, and of course we can work with other groups to accomplish certain tasks. On the other hand, we might look more like liberals to certain people on certain issues. For instance, on the drug war. We're more liberal than liberals on the drug war. We don't want to just decriminalize drugs. We want to abolish the drug war altogether. We want full legalization. Not because we support the idea of people using drugs. If you use drugs, you got to accept the consequences. But again, self-ownership, that's a personal choice. It should not be anyone's job or right, for that matter, to put a gun to your head or threaten violence against you if you decide to take drugs. That's a personal choice, and of course you have to accept the consequences of that choice. You have to live with those consequences. What drugs will do to you and that sort of thing. So gay marriage, prostitution, immigration, we're going to be more aligned with Democrats or liberals on those things. And I'm not talking about the elected Democrats, because of course they're big government just like everyone else that's in office. More along the lines of more of an open border kind of thing, or allowing anybody to marry, because that's kind of a personal choice. That's really not something the government gets involved with. So libertarians are quite a bit different, and we have a philosophical underpinning for believing what we believe. It's not just a matter of we should abandon those principles and abandon what we believe and join with these other groups, because then they all get watered down and you end up having the Republican Party that you have today. That's why the Republican Party is what it is, because they try to make it a big tent and bring everyone in, and you're just going to have kind of a watering down of the whole thing. You're not going to have any principles. You're not going to have anything worth standing up for or fighting for, or anything like that. There is really no uniting factor in the Republican Party, and essentially if we're going to try and get together with other groups and bring them into the Republican Party and take it over, we're going to water it down even further. So, I really don't think there's much of a benefit to trying to bring everyone together into one big tent. Now, on the other hand, I do like the idea of talking to people and bringing them over to libertarian ideas, and explaining to them why I believe the way I do, why I think the way I do, what my underlying principles are, and explaining why I think that's the right way to think, and hopefully convincing someone to agree with me, and therefore they join the Libertarian Party, or they join the Libertarian way of thinking. Not like, well, we have this one little thing in common, you think it's okay to put a gun on my head and steal from me, but I'll put that aside because we have this one issue in common. I don't think that's really something that would be something you'd want to accomplish. I would rather work with people and try and convince them into the libertarian way of thinking, and I think that would be kind of the way that you'd want to go about it, which is, you know, one of the reasons for doing these videos, one of the reasons for doing our radio show, for writing the articles, just to kind of get the ideas out there. So hopefully you'll end up subscribing, and you'll, you know, tune into the radio show, look at some of the articles, visit us at libertariansolution.com, and you know, maybe get some ideas on how a system can work without government controlling us, without government telling us what we have to do, with, you know, interactions among humans and, you know, people being voluntary. Of course, if you have any suggestions for our comments on this particular video, I welcome those as well. This is the first video I've done where I just sit and talk to a camera, and I tend to be a fast talker normally, so that's something that will continue to happen until I think of it consciously, and I'll try and slow that down. I know that's probably been pretty bad for this video, so you might have to pause, rewind a few times to pick everything up. Hopefully that won't really be too much of a problem, and I'll get better at that, and better putting together these videos, and hopefully continue to cover more concepts and topics.